And we are live coming from the dirtiest South in Winston-Salem. Watching this game here, which Detroit looked very good at. And now the 49ers having the ball back to start. We got Battery. He says breakers with small hands intimidates him. The prices intimidate Lou Rock. I love right off the giddy up. We haven't even got into it. People are already coming with some answers. I want to thank you, Battery, for nominating me. I want to thank everyone who has nominated me. I don't know if I've seen all the videos. I've seen quite a bit. By this time, you're ready to start running into a wall. I don't know how Jake does it. I know most people put their the names down the bottom, but man, I know there is a lot of videos. I told him in my video, I just think there's so many and a lot of people, and we got such a broad community now, a lot of different tastes, a lot of different little groups within the communities that overlap, and it's great. Uh, I just again using it to just see who's all out there. I've caught up with, looked at some different channels that I haven't before. Um, it's a great way to see that, and let's keep in mind that's what it's about. Who cares about the patch and all that stuff? Let's be for real. I think everybody's great in their own sense by just having the cojones to get in front of a camera, put a microphone in front of you, show off cards, and love what you're doing. That's the big thing. What's up, Doc? This football game tonight, great game, better than the first one. That first one was a little letdown. I've been with Carlos watching the game. Hopefully he jumps on over here. Got probably that's where everybody else is at. I've sent invites out to some people. Hopefully they'll come in. I don't know if anybody have seen the new the 2023 Stadium Club, but as usual, beautiful card. Looks great. At least they did a little different. It doesn't look like the other stadium clubs with the names and everything. It's a little different. But it's a picture. I really do like it. I did see some of them. Some of the legends pictures. Some of the same pictures they've used in the past. They only got so much of a library. But really liked it. I saw Mike O sent out a thing to us in a group chat about 5-star. Oh, what a play! 5-star, coming out with theirs. 2 cards in a pack. I didn't see a price, but it's got to be around $400 probably. I think it said no card was over 20, number to 20. That's always an interesting thing, waiting to see who's going to open that and what makes it out to the market. Because I still feel like, I don't know, I don't see a lot of cards hitting the market. What's up, Red Rum? So, and the reason, I'm going to get right into it. Hopefully people jump in. So the reason I brought up this topic is, so I was on a podcast last Sunday. It came up, and I can't remember if it was on the show or after the show. It really doesn't matter, but it was a great point. And hey, what's up, Don? And this is the man. I hope he doesn't mind me telling the story, of why do you collect how you collect? Why do you collect vintage? And Don said, the new stuff intimidates me a little bit. It's too much of it. And I 100% agree with him. I never heard anybody state that, but when he said it, it was like, boop, okay, I agree. I'm with you. I'm with you. If you sit there and you're used to buying Blue Jacket intimidates me, yeah, he can be. Uh if you're buying, a 76 tops card, there's only one, right? There's no difference. Hey, it might have a different star on the little back by the TM or something stupid like that. But there's not 38 color versions, and a name variant, a chrome, a sapphire, and then Tops don't make 30 other sets in 1976. They made one. So, yes, I can understand that's intimidating. For me, I was just talking to them. I've gotten a little bit more comfortable doing vintage baseball over the last uh, decade when I realized, hey, I've been buying vintage all along. I just forgot I'm vintage as well. I'm 52 years old. So hey, stop thinking it's a different thing. It's not a different thing. Baseball cards. But when it comes to football vintage, not I don't know. I don't know where to start on pricing, right? I know what players are what, know what cards are what, but when it comes to pricing, I have to phone a friend. I will, because I have no idea. Same way with vintage hockey, and I don't know the players all that well, so I wouldn't go into that field. Some vintage football, I wouldn't mind getting some of the big names if I could afford them someday. But like I said, I only have a certain amount of hobby dollars to spend on this hobby, so I can't just go running around buying everything. What's up, Tony's Jersey? Good day, all. Tony from Australia. Okay, from way down yonder. Good morning to you. Good day. I don't. I know you're in tomorrow. I think on Monday. Uh, but that's why I brought this topic up, because I thought that was an awesome statement. And I 100% believe it. But for me, I just buy it. For me, I don't. I have a certain price range, and when it comes to like all the variants and stuff, I'm not going to go stupid. I think people that spend thousands of dollars because it says one of one on it is kind of midday Monday. Okay, uh, I think it's a little ridiculous. I don't think you're ridiculous. I just think it's a learning thing, and a lot of the newer people coming into this got sold on the numbering on the cards. Uh, and I've been saying this all along. So now we have numbered cards, but in the vintage world, now we get, well, not now, they've been getting graded for years. So you do have a numbering even on the vintage cars. It's just now what grade they are. And that might even help on how you spend your money, but you'll have to pay for PSA 10 to an SGC 10 to a CGC 10 to who knows whatever, or in 9.5 and a BGS is the same as a 10. You have to know all that stuff. Staven, pre-war intimidated me for years. There's a big learning curve, and I'm still learning. But like anything else in this hobby, if you put the time in, you will see dividends. Yes. So many of y'all might know a few years back at a national, I had set a goal and saved up money to, and I had 3 cards on my radar. Um, I had the Roberto Clemente rookie, the Satchel Paige 53, and the Gretzky rookie. I wanted Tops or a Peachy, whatever I could get. Uh, and I studied. I studied like it was finals. If I would have studied like I studied to go to that national, I would have a college degree hanging behind me. I wouldn't be working second shift in a, having other people with degrees telling me what to do. Uh, so I studied, and I did very well for myself because of that. What's up, Amari? What's up, Yannick? Because of that, I ended up getting a higher grade in a Topps Gretzky and a little bit better Satchel Paige than I planned on getting, because I actually did better than what was the comps at the time. And I hate that term, but you got to use it, right? Um, so I did pretty well. I actually felt like I did really well, really well. I was shaking because that was the first time I counted out over thousands of dollars at one card at a booth, so I was a little nervous. Yeah, so but that was my first comma cards, and you know loved it. Uh, yeah, I did say national, right? So Amari says, when I got back in a hobby back in 2019, it was definitely grading cards. Yeah, grading cards to me, I thought was a joke. Now I'm part of the joke, so I say it's the greatest inside joke. I always thought it was kind of foolish to get my cards graded. Now I love it. Um, that's the only way I purchase graded cards, because I feel like it's a cheat sheet for buying graded cards. I mean, buying vintage cards. Uh, I just think it's, just really, really helps. I've got 4 gift cards, all with two $4 each on them. I'm strategically buying a few Jordans. Okay. Yannick, Lou Rock, like everybody else. I think we're six months from the weekend we're on right now from the national, because it's back to July and August is all on that same week. So on that weekend, I think we're back to that July/August weekend on this year. Yeah, our group was talking about an Airbnb this week. Fabian was like, it's a little early to start. He said it and brought it up, but I don't think it's too early right now. We're in the year. I think the planning stages are starting now, and I'll be doing my 10 weeks leading up to the national again, the road to the national. So if anybody's interested in that are going or not going to talk about it, yeah, Lou Rock, I heard party at my crib. Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have that. So I'd love to have some of you guys on for that, to hear plans and executions and what you're looking forward to, what kind of comfy shoes you're wearing. I know another group. Yeah, well, we actually put in our reserve the week after the show last year, with the same group that we had at Chicago. So it's me, East Connecticut Cards, which is Mike Fabian, David, Midlife Card Crisis, the original, Miko, and Ed keeps saying he's not going with us. He's going to get a hotel, but we're trying to get him to stay with us. So, yeah, so we're pretty set. Not too far away. Everybody's got to drive to it. It's not, Chicago is a very unique situation. I know I'm getting off of what we want to talk about tonight, but Chicago was that Rosemont was built. That whole area was built for that convention center. So that's a unique situation how that's built. Most convention centers are like Cleveland, an old building that they converted. They do have another one downtown Cleveland, but I don't think it's quite as big. And I think it's right next to all the ball fields and all that, if I'm not mistaken. I know a lot, that's how most of them are. Yeah, Don, he asked for one a couple of weeks ago, so I gave him one. Uh, so watch what you're saying. I got the popo watching. But back to what we were talking about. Intimidation in a hobby can come in different areas. Uh, Battery said small hands of breakers. That can be intimidating. Buying into a break or buying a box for the first time and not getting what you thinking you're going to get out of it, and you know, all of that stuff is kind of uh, you know, intimidation. And this hobby you got money involved, a lot of different things going on. You can go into a card shop and it just feels like you get overwhelmed. Uh, Man, if you go to the National, that is overwhelming. I don't care how many times you go; it takes a minute to get your you know take it in and realize what's going on. Thank you, Red Rome. Uh, I just think it's a lot of intimidating things when it comes to this hobby, but it shouldn't be. It's all in good fun and just taking it stride, and you're gonna make mistakes doing things. You're gonna make you know some bad decisions, and the thing is to learn from it and keep moving on. I'm spinning and busting my wad at the first table. Well, I don't know. I was almost going to tell you, well, when you first walk in, because at Chicago there was three entrances, but at Cleveland I think they're going to only have one entrance this year from what layout I saw. Let's see here. I don't want Don to be all upset. Hold on one. Uh, okay, Don, that should get you. Staven. Staven says, Lou, why are you lying? You'll spend all your money buying from George before you even hit the show floor. So uh, I was also talking to Carlos about, and speaking about intimidating, is sports card investor, his new store. Has anybody watched that video? I have not. Um, uh, well, at least buy some cards so you have something to show for it. It sounds like it's my dream. I asked if you could see, like, when he is doing his show, he's going to have a wall where a window you can see him doing a show, stuff like that. And it sounds pretty good. I was intimidated by talking to Dr. Beck. Yes, you were. I had to talk. I go, Joe, he's just a guy, man. Just go up to him. He signs all the time. He loves it. He loves shaking hands. Uh, Dr. Jim Beckett is a very nice guy, very approachable, loves to talk. Listed a card on eBay was pretty intimidating. I remember the first. Yes, I agree with that. I to this day, I'm intimidated by it. Yeah. Don, somebody better sleep on top of one blanket. Somebody else sleep under it. Let's put down some plastic. Especially gets into the bourbon. Yeah, so Cleveland should be. We have to. I don't know how many of y'all have been to Cleveland, so Uh, yeah, surely, Rock. So, Jersey, a lot of people had Airbnbs, but at least in Cleveland, Airbnbs are not in, where we're scared to walk outside. It looks like it still is Cleveland. So, hey, I give them out. I Not a problem. I would take lose away and make him beg. Nah, I ain't gonna do that. But anyway, uh, thanks. Anybody? What else is anybody intimidated? I mean, for real, like, I love to hear this because for me, you know, I thought that was a great Don saying that to me. That like boom, because I was like that the year I went to go buy, my vintage cards. And Don, I told you I don't buy. I got some PWCC. I put a couple of Clementes tonight. The price was too good, and they looked way, way too good. One was a 69 Kellogg's. Submitting cards, first time it's intimidated. Yeah. And also, it's a little nerve wracking because you're so worried about the mail. I've never lost anything in the mail, but all it takes is one time. Like I had my first mail stole from me this year. Um, I never had that before, but it happened to me this year. Uh, so those things can happen. And hey, what's up, Meet the Mets? Love that name. Agree, Lou. I was glad mine were only being shipped on one way with the national drop off. Yeah. And I don't know if that's intimidating more as you're just a little nervous about sending them. But I have done them so much. I got two packages, one for CSG and one for SGC. Um, Currently uploading videos to YouTube or even getting on cam and talking about cards. I understand that, Amari. And you don't have to get on camera. You can always face it Wesker Griff way. Um, how those back pages do it. You don't have to get on the camera yourself until if you ever get comfortable, then do it. Finally sent in my first submission. Yeah. And it really doesn't get any easier. And let me tell you what makes me more nervous. Okay. So I have a package here, 31 cards, 31 going to, it's a little over $1,000 in cards going to CSG. What makes me more nervous is the cards are not all mine. That's what really, and I've been doing some cards getting graded for my boss at work. That really made me nervous. So I have one out right now at SGC for him. Actually, a Gretzky rookie. Yeah, and yep. Yeah, it's get easier the more you sew, the more comfortable you'll get. Yep. And they're all so CSG. I just want to put this right there. I've been using more for non-sports. It's if you ever want to resell a non-sport, it's more acceptable. So actually, I have Disney cards and a few Star Wars cards in there for CSG. SGC, I'm actually sending cards for resale because I get them back quicker, and I'm trying to get ready for the opening of baseball season, which we're the 9th is the first two teams report on February 9th. The Lions, they came out in the second half and they're playing like we've been waiting on them to play. And the 49ers decided they wanted to play like they should be playing. There's Staven. Staven was I remember when Staven first, which is Dom, when he first started, but he has come a long way, and he's just another one of the dudes now. Really, really going pretty good. I'm like this young man. I said it before. Uh, I think he is a great person in this hobby. Doesn't get intimidated by the older guys of our that's here, and he right in there with us. Dom's a good one. Yeah, and I wish my man Natsman was on here. He can really talk about it. He Don has openly said that Natsman and Dozeback Pages is kind of where he got started. And now he's passing it on, telling you. Thank you. It's my Death Star microphone. Somebody said. I think he should go into more woodworking. Same Memorial, I believe I got the right one on SGC video. No, this is a microphone. It's just on a boom on instead of in front of me, or it's on the side. So I have 3 screens plus a TV right there, so I can do my video games. I'm gonna start streaming my video games live and doing videos for my other channel, and so I kind of got a setup. I got another camera. I do 2 cameras, as y'all know, when I show off cards on Wednesday. I could set up for 3 cameras if I really, really wanted to. Orlando, what's up, brother? 357, what's going on? Yeah, Orlando, you're not going to see a live stream on any computer, on anywhere, without him making a appearance. One of the greats. Orlando, I have to get you on for the road, at least to the road to the national, if not before. Especially talk about non-sport. Yeah, you were on the live chat. Don, do you do anything on accident? Oh, geez. But I gotta give it to Don. Could get intimidated because he's the young guy in y'all's group, but he's right in there with everybody. For collectors, for collecting the misfits. He's just right there with y'all, man. It's really, really cool. Don, hey, if anybody says your name, good, bad, or indifferent, it's always good on these channels. McCaffrey is a beast. Oh, he got dropped on his head. Probably don't know where he's at. Thomas everywhere. Dom, will you have 3 years this year? Is this your 3rd year? I know my man Battery, he's on his 3rd year. You guys, man, y'all would love Carlisle. Battery, his channel. I just don't understand why he can't get more subs or more views at least. He does Braves, but he does all kinds of vintage. He'll do some pre-war, and he really gives great information on his cards, sets. He really breaks it down and does it in a great way. And dude is great. Has some great videos. I need to ask him. On PWCC had a great. No, I'm a little over a year and a half. I'll be eligible. Okay. All right. Well, the 49ers have taken the lead. Detroit has done zero in the second half. Mm. Well, that's Four Leaf. What's up, brother? One Four Leaf, one of the great guys at the National, came up with a great system there. Really love what he does. Hope he's there this year. Getting some votes too. He's in line. He'll probably a good bet on getting a patch this year. Oh, that's funny. Oh, oh my gosh. So is anything else intimidate y'all? I thought by now one of my boys would get on, but they're probably watching the game. It's 3 minutes left in the game. So that's why I'm rolling solo tonight. Right now we're kind of a dead spot in the sports, especially baseball. Uh, I think what Valentine's Day is supposed to be the release of. Yeah, I'm the same way. Four leaf. I am blown away with the votes that I'm getting. To be just in the talk is just mind blowing to me, and I really do appreciate it. It's over the top. I think Valentine's Day or around that time we're supposed to be getting Series One. Uh, Usually we used to get opening day, but now it's big league around the time of opening day. We should get heritage in between that time. Uh, Scott, it does intimidate me a little bit just because he spells his name a lot cooler than I do. Uh, we do have some stuff looking forward for baseball. We just had, Hall of Fame voting. I haven't talked about that. Nothing too exciting with the three guys that got voted in to me. Nothing just to go, whoo, those three guys are something special. Beltray is a special guy, defensively hitting, looking at his numbers. Uh, but they're just not, you know, jumping off the page, coming out, just really, just something, you're like, yes. Todd Helton playing in Colorado, uh, Mauer playing in Minnesota, great catcher, one of the best ever. I would say not best ever, probably just the years he was there, he was one of the best catchers in the league when at his top. Concussions drove him out. He was an okay first baseman. Won his batting titles as a catcher, MVP as a catcher. So I'm glad he got in, and it makes me feel like Buster Posey has a better chance of getting in. Um, so that's we got Ichiro next year. That's going to be exciting. Um, I'm really looking forward to that. Just great, great, great ball player. Uh, just I can't wait for the season to start. Um, I'm waiting for these last free agents to get signed. Uh, I know Lou Rock, your Mets look like, I mean, not Mets, your Yankees look like they might be for real this year. Yeah, that's true, Dom. Yeah, this one's a good one here. I love this one. It's a little intimidating to ask for a better sticker asking price. I usually just pay what's being asked. Yeah, I'm not good at that either. I'm terrible at that, but I've learned just to do it. If they say no, then I'll make up my mind. But usually I'm asking on something that I'm already kind of comfortable with. So whatever they come down, and almost every time they come down to. Uh so Mari, I purchased my case of jumbos, debating adding a case of hangers 2023 top Stadium Club blaster case or 2023 Bowman blaster case. I'm not a big Bowman fan anymore because of the price. I think the price, I don't talk about value very often. I talk about value of opening up product and what you get out of Bowman for the price that they're paying for now. I don't think it's even worth it on a collector. Um, the value for me is just not there. Um, and the Stadium Club Blaster case, if you haven't watched uh, Mike O, you actually that's your best value per card for buying Stadium Club is out of the blasters. Um, so that if you're looking at that, you always hangers is always a great. Usually the hangers is your best bet of getting color inserts. For some reason, hangers have some of the best percentage values for that. But that's my 2 cents on Bowman. I'm Bowman since it gone crazy in price has just not been my cup of tea. Uh, yeah, I believe it is, and that whole division, Lou Rock, is going to be a bloodbath. I think Baltimore, Tampa, you guys, those three teams are going to just beat up on each other, and I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them make the playoffs. So, um, it's going to be fun, and if Rodon can get to be the pitcher that they want, then y'all are going to be deep in the pitching. Never pay sticker, or there was only one time I paid sticker, and it was 10% below comps. No need to get greedy. Yep, that's uh, yeah. But he got closer than I thought he was going to get because he's one of the guys that's suspicious under the steroids. I don't know how we pick and choose who's did the steroids and who didn't. Have to be willing to walk away. Exactly. I understand paying sticker if it's a $20 and less if it's already a great price, but beyond that, negotiating is a virtual stretch in your hobby dollar. Yeah, and so now I'm on this one. Usually, I like when I buy something like this at a show, I try to get 4 or 5 cards from that table so we can do a bundle and try to cut that price down even more. That's the only thing I would do, unless it's just something I gotta have and he doesn't have anything else. Uh, that's funny. uh, oh, okay. 2020. Well, I was wondering where the yellows went because you couldn't, they don't have them in Walgreens anymore. I think Walgreens during the COVID said, we're out. It's done. So with a balanced schedule, divisions don't beat up on each other anymore. Not as much, but I guess what I mean is they still play each other a little bit more than usual. But I just think that those teams. Okay, let me tell you this: if you're playing in the other divisions, watch out because those teams are going to beat the heck out of you. The Yankees and your Braves are the same way. The National League East with the Braves, Phillies, and Marlins. Uh, the three they're liable all three to make the playoffs. With my Mets sitting there 5 games under 500. So And this is right here. This guy right here. If y'all have a chance, look up Battery, the Battery. Go to his channel. Great channel. Check him out. Check each other's channels out. I think most of us all know each other here. Let's see. The AL is always competitive. The best part is the Red Sox are always at the bottom looking. Yeah, and here's the funny thing. All teams were above 500 in the AL East last year, right? So everybody was like wanting to poo-poo on teams, but hey, the teams were good. They were still good. It's just, not everybody, they don't have enough spots in the playoffs. Yeah. Lou, that's so Bagwell's the first person I think about when you start talking about that era and how we look the other way on certain players and some other players, right? Uh, Pudge, you just don't know. And I think there's more and more players now doing it too. And the Players Association has worked out on how the Detroit just score again. Um, yep. God grief. So it's gonna be I don't know how. I don't and it's upsetting me after going to the Baseball Hall of Fame this past year and actually seeing how celebrated those players are. The Bonds, the McGuires, Clemens, Petit, uh, that they're in the record books. They're in the top third floor. They're talked about heavily there. And then the actual commissioner of the league that oversaw that era of baseball is in the Hall of Fame. This plaque is on the first floor. I find that all, as Staven says, hypocrites. uh, Lou Rock says he loves what I think the Red Sox are going to try to do what some other teams are doing because from the way it sounds is they're screaming poverty. So color, yeah. See, you brought that up. Uh, that's one thing. I agree with you, Don. When I started putting it in perspective, when I was started looking for the Clementes, and I got very comfortable buying Clementes. Uh, I actually put my first bid on I talked to you and John. I put my first bid on a Campanella this week. I want to see how that works out. That's my next guy that I'm going after, player run. Love his story, catcher, one of the greats, and that's my next guy for. I like to concentrate on one guy at a time when it comes to vintage, just so I can really concentrate on that player and know what I'm looking at. Red Rum's just laughing at everybody. McCaffrey is a beast. He is just. Yeah, but nobody believes Canseco. Nobody believed Canseco until everything hit the fan. And then but nobody wants to believe Canseco everything, right? Well, at first it was Caminiti, right? Caminiti came out before he passed talking about on a team that he played with Bagwell, Biggio, and all these guys on the Astros, and then it was Canseco. Him and his twin brother look like before and after pictures. It's just crazy to me how they pick and choose, right? We all know that era should be asterisk in there. You want to put this player played in this steroid era, whatever. I don't care, but we don't have the home run leader, even though he's an asshole. Some people say We don't have the strikeout leader. We don't have the hits leader, even though it's a different reasoning. We don't have these guys in the Hall of Fame, but on plaques, but they're on the third floor in the records room. They're upstairs boasted about in baseball. That's what really gets to me. Um, yeah, that's you kind of. I feel the same way with the Astros, right? I'm not saying that those guys did it, but how do you know, you can't do a reasoning from silence or whatever, or just because or whatever. And I understand that, but you know, I feel like it's tough, and I understand, and I agree with anybody that feels differently or thinks they shouldn't be in there or call them cheaters. I don't know if some of them that actually miss time, like A Rod or some other ones, go right ahead. But when you sit there and tell me Bonds cheated, oh really? How many games did he miss? Clemens cheated. How many games did he miss? So you've decided that you couldn't say they did it and made them miss games while they were playing. So you're going to decide to hold them out of the Hall of Fame? That's to me bullshit. And you can sit there and give me the morality clause and all that stuff, then you need to go in and start taking out some plaques. And Wesker Griff can tell you the first guy he would rip out. I just think, you know, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to fight for them or anything. I could just see where they should be in, and if not, they're not. But then they shouldn't be celebrated in other parts of the hall. Um, yeah, Lou Rock Canseco is the most honest guy in baseball. And I don't know why yes, he wanted to sell a book. So he does have a reason to lie if he really wanted to, I guess. But, after the fact, now what's the reasoning? Selig sold his soul. That group of ball players saved baseball. You remember the strike? Baseball was down. The home run started. McGuire, Sosa. If you haven't read the Bonds book, the unauthorized autobiography, I have it. He was upset because them two were stealing his highlights. He thought he should have been, because he was hitting the home runs too and batting average and all, having an MVP year. Thought they were stealing his limelight, and he came back and did what he did. But my God, they were scared to throw to him. I know steroids helps a little bit, but my God, the percentages of balls he was putting in play that went out is just crazy to me. That just to make contact like that. And I mean, you can tell me all you want as head grew 10 sizes, whatever. I agree with you. And if he's not in, he's not in. But I can see why they should be in. It's just upsetting to me that Bud Selig is in and they celebrate him. And then you're going to turn around and say, oh, they can't be in the hall. Canseco told everything was basically banned, right? I think the ball was juiced as the players in that era. I think so too, because they knew they had to save the sport. Hockey came back. They knew they had to do it. They opened it up, stopped making people hit each other so much, and opened the game so the top players would stay on the ice and score more goals. They started doing that, and the goalies got better, so the goals came down. But they tried to lengthen the ice, and they couldn't do it physically because you can't lengthen the rinks and the stadiums that were already built. But you can stop they let two-line passing, and if you could contest the icing, you could, and all this other stuff to help the game go faster and score more goals after the players got so big. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Don. But you have to understand that steroids are not just for strengthening, it's for body repair and health. that steroids were also used so you could stay in shape for the whole season. You could bounce back from injury faster, things like that. It wasn't just for size and muscle. Um, so the steroids were used for different reasonings. Uh, I'll only punish the idiots who kept doing it after baseball banned stuff and suspended guys, a la A-Rod and Manny. Everyone else has varying levels of suspicion, so I'm not going to single that guys out. Yeah, and I mean, you know, David Ortiz was on the list that was not supposed to come out. It doesn't say what he tested positive for, but he tested positive for something. He's in the hall. There's no morality clause there. Um, you know, I I just feel like thank you, Red Rum. I just and if somebody disagrees, I understand. I see both sides. That's just my opinion. Probably the best way to prevent tanking or owners not putting the best product on the field is tier the revenue sharing amongst teams where worst performing teams receives least amount of money. That wouldn't be bad. But in order to do that, you have to have a ceiling and a bottom to your money. You got to have a hard cap. You're going to have a bottom cap. You got to actually be everybody on an equal playing field. I wish somebody would tell me why the Pittsburgh Pirates spent 2 years and a bunch of money on Chapman. I wish somebody could tell me that. That was very weird to me. I didn't understand that pickup at all this week. 10 million or 24 million, whatever they spent for 2 years in Chapman. I didn't understand that at all. Was that going to get them to stay in first place after April if they had a better guy in the bullpen or closer? I don't know. I would tell you to give me a thumbs up if you're ready, but I'm getting a Westergriff thing vibe from you.
What's up? How you doing?
Did you watch the game? Finish watching the game?
I did.
Yeah. How about the 49ers shutting them down in the second half?
They put it together. It's 2 weeks in a row where the Niners did not particularly play well early, and they're not like a come from behind type of team, but they've done it. This one was a little more of an aggressive come from behind. Obviously, they were right in the game last week, but man, being a Lions fan, that's got to be rough.
Right.
I think losing a conference championship like that, or even it depends on the state of your team, but I think that's worse than losing like the Super Bowl. Like you lose the Super Bowl, you lose it, but like when you're a team like the Lions, like winning the conference means something. Like if you're the Chiefs or New England or the Steelers, like a team that's been in it a ton, it's not like the Lions that would have been their first year. Like that means something. When you're up 24-7 at halftime, as a fan, you can't help but start like dreaming, thinking it like really thinking like, oh my God, is this real? Like 30 minutes away. And then to have that,
right,
happen in that way has got to be rough.
So did you hear any of the conversation before you got on?
I hear your little steroid chat.
My rant, but I mean,
like my thing, just like a partial of my take on that is none of those guys deserve to get in. Like Pete Rose doesn't deserve to get in. That doesn't mean I don't think they should be in, but like I don't feel bad for the particular people who were big time, guys who obviously, took massive advantage of it. But unfortunately,
right.
it's baseball's fault. That's why I'm not saying I think they like baseball's got a major problem that their Hall of Fame doesn't have the all-time hits leader. Some of the top strikeout. Like when you have all these guys, when you have It's just something's missing. It's be one thing if it was one guy, but Joe Jackson and Pete Rose and freaking the whole era of players like McGuire and Bonds and Clemens and all these guys, like and Alex, it's problematic. And I don't know what the solution is, and I don't think anyone does, but it's absolutely an issue.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is either, but it's just after going there, I've said it before. After seeing what I saw there, how it's played out, it just feels like it's an injustice. Um, and
It's
don't
just,
it,
I mean, the thing is, like, it's not fair on any level because now you're having, again, like the suspicion of guys. So we're just assuming certain guys did it and assuming other guys didn't. And then you have other guys from the era being overlooked because they don't look as good. Even the guys who, like for a Phillies perspective, like a guy like Bobby Abreu kind of is a little past that. And like Abreu's a borderline case, and I only use him because he pops into my head because he's a Philly. But I'm sure there's other similar players from that era that's like directly after, like guys like him. Because Bobby Abreu, you look at his stats, you look at some of the stat lines, the type of players who've done what he's done with specific, the amount of home runs, doubles, stolen bases. Like he's on a short list of guys who have done that, but no one ever thought of him as a star. He
mhm.
was generally in Philadelphia, he was always seen as super underrated. And then expectations built up too much. And suddenly, like, I feel like some fans in Philadelphia kind of overrated him a little bit and they expected so much out of him. And then he kind of got looked down a little bit. And then he ended up on the Yankees, which obviously is a star-studded thing, and the Angels for a while. But like he was really good, and there's a really strong case that he should be in the Hall of Fame. Not some kind of first ballot guy, and maybe even a writer's ballot guy. But he gets overlooked because he wasn't seen as a superstar because he's following up all these guys who are hitting 50 home runs a year and all this. So
Right.
that's why it's such a mixed thing. And the
Well,
prolonging of careers and stuff. Like you have all these guys like David Wright, Chase Utley, Dustin Pedroia, all these guys. If these guys took steroids and had 5 more strong seasons, then you wouldn't be questioning, was their peak long enough? Like it's a really messy situation, and it's never going to be as clear as people want it to be.
so saying that, I've talked about this on my show for yesterday, and also, uh, I think the yes sir, Dom. What do you got here? Pete Rose and Black Sox guys are banned for breaking a written rule. The pre-suspensionary steroid guys are just a character clause limbos, and I understand that 100%. I understand.
I mean, what my thing is, I
What's
understand,
up, Stooks?
I understand their written rules. I'm just saying it's one of those things that it's not a good look for baseball. Like I believe me,
Right,
I think Pete Rose is an asshole. Like he's not like a good dude at all. Like people in Philadelphia love him, especially a lot of people in their 60s, 70s. Like they have fond memories of him as a player. And as a player, obviously Hall of Famer, but like it's beyond just the betting stuff, which if he didn't act the way he acted, they may have lifted it at some point and let him in. Like
right.
he's got a whole like I'm
So
not I'm
the commissioner of the time asked him, all you had to do was admit that you bet on baseball, and you're in. And he wouldn't do it. Then he finally did it, but all the other commissioners are holding to this.
Well, there was a lot of stuff too. They were going to start looking into it, and then there was all sorts of, you know, his behavior with potentially underage girls type of stuff too. That a lot of that came out, which soured things a little bit too. That's why the Phillies had a bobblehead day and all kinds of things that I know was scheduled because a lot of the Philly guys, including myself, we were going to a bobblehead day, and they scrapped the bobblehead day when that stuff came out. So he's got a whole list of issues.
Right. Yeah. It's tough to say that because, well, what I was going to say was uh, this year's class just doesn't bring a lot of excitement to me. You were touching on that with Beltray. He's not a superstar.
I mean,
You know, I think
the
we're all
thing.
looking forward to Ichiro next year. Um, it just it's just a oh hum kind of class this year.
I mean, I also
Unless
think
it's
with the
Duke,
Hall of
then you
Fame too. One of the problems with the Hall of Fame too, current day, and the reality is, and it might upset people, but the reality is we overrate all the old guys. Like, and I'm not saying Willie Mays, Mantle, all this, but beyond that, like even guys you never saw play or guys who played when you were very young, a lot of them are probably thought of in your mind as better because you just didn't see them enough. You didn't see all the flaws. Like when I was a kid, I thought Barry Larkin was amazing and Ryan Sandberg. Like I thought they were like, and then you look at their career stats now, and I'm like, dude, they don't look like they were that great. Like obviously they were great players, but when
right.
you're 7 years old, and I think that's one of the problems. Everyone's so exposed now. Like you can watch the highlights. You see, like people are like Mike Trout blows. Like people remember, oh, he hasn't won anything. It's like, well, Ernie Banks never won shit. Like, is Ernie Banks? Does he suck because he never played in the World Series? But we think, oh, Mike Trout's been on the Angels and they suck, and oh, we have this memory of Mike Trout striking out in the World Baseball Classic to Otani. It's like, and even like things like, and like Adrian Beltre, like I think Adrian Beltre Hall of Famer, first ballot, but like, was he a superstar? Like, I think from what I heard, like just people talking about on YouTube, like I discussed this with guys like Ed. I'm like, he's getting to the point where he's a little overrated. Now that's going to sound absurd because yes, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but like all of a sudden, it's like he wasn't really a dominant of the sport. He was a longevity guy. He had the um, he came up at age 19 or 20, which is a massive bonus. But like there was a point in his career through 7, 8 years where it was kind of like, oh, this guy's not as good as he's supposed to be. And there's like he was never an all-star. Now he should have been an all-star. It was a year he had 48 home runs, but like I
Well,
think it took him 13 years to make an all-star game. He only was an all-star 4 times in 20 some years.
21
Granted,
years for All Stars. Yeah.
granted, we're in a time where there's 30 teams as opposed to back in the, that's why you hear stuff like, oh, Hank Aaron, and again, Hank Aaron, all time absolute legend. I'm just using him because I know he made 20 All-Star games, and I know there's other guys who made 15 and 16. It's like, yeah, but back then there were like 18, 20 teams. Nowadays there's 30 teams. Everyone needs a representative, all that bullshit. So you're never going to have as many All-Star games as you had, in the
Well, you got to
60s and
remember
70s.
too, third base was loaded every year.
No, of course. And I'm
Beltray
not,
played.
but that's what I'm saying. Like he didn't win an MVP, but you look at the stats, like all time, he's right there. Like if you bounce around the different sabermetrics or you look at the counting totals, either way, he's top 10 third baseman of all time. Probably like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that.
Thanks, Nats,
And
man.
and there's some you can think of he's higher, but there's just I don't know, like it's one of these things. I wanted to do a video on this and I just haven't had time, and I tried to get Ed to do one. I just the Hall of Fame stuff, like it's all going to be perspective and it's all going to be people's opinion, and that's just the reality of it.
But
Like
see,
there's no
here's what.
lockdown, this is what it is type of stuff.
So Carlisle makes this point. I love Henry Aaron, but he was invited to about half a dozen All Star games on reputation. That happens to this day. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Guys
Pujols
on
a
the end of
couple
their
years ago, right?
careers, they become legends while they're playing. They're going to get voted in. That's just the way it is.
But that's what I guess my point is. Ultimately, the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, has got to be a collection of course, longevity counts for something. Counting stats count for something. I think peak should count for more than it probably did back in the day. Awards and all that stuff like should be seen as bonuses. You can't, there's only one MVP a year. Um, Contribution to team, what it means. I think fame needs to be taken more into account. Like, I know a lot of the hardcore guys are like completely anti Roger Maris, and based on his counting totals and his career overall accomplishments, probably not a Hall of Famer. But I think the 1961 season, like, I count that as like 7 seasons worth of like that is so big. Like, if he got in, I think if you ask the average baseball fan who doesn't follow it hardcore, is Roger Maris in the Hall of Fame? Most would say, oh, yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame because they know the name. Like, that's why I'm completely pro a guy like Don Mattingly. Like, when you're that big in the sport, and that's my case for Todd Helton. Like, I'm not as sold on Todd Helton the way our buddy Ed is. His counting numbers as a first baseman they're not up there with most of the Hall of Famers. And you always hear too, oh, he can't help what he played. Like, if you want to count, and I'm not counting playing in Colorado against him, but it's like, yeah, he couldn't help where he was drafted, but he sure as shit could have left it as a free agent after 5 or 6 years. Like, he re-signed with the Rockies, so he could count it. Not that his numbers are definitely better in Colorado, but the point, like, when I think of Rockies, I think of Todd Helton. I do think of Larry Walker, but I still see him as an expo almost just as much, even though he, put his career over the top with the Rockies. But like, when you mean that much for a franchise, like, that's a huge bonus.
So here's my thing. Henry's asking, where is the Jackie Robinson statue? And I'm just going to point this out, that Mangini and Rick are suspiciously not here tonight. So I don't know where they had it, but I'm not saying they took it. Stooks said 1959 to 62, there was 2 All-Star games a year, right? Yeah, because my dad was telling me that they used to have 2 All-Star games in a year.
Yeah, well, they didn't even have one in 2020. I mean, right. That's something you put on like the list, but I wouldn't like straight up judge guys for that. And like the whole pitching thing, I know that's like the whole new thing. Like, pitching has just changed. Like, the sport has changed. Like, guys aren't going to win as many games for a multitude of reasons. Like, first of all, the guys throw far harder than they used to. So they're just going to be, they might not throw 400 innings like they did in 1885, but like, they're also putting more on their arms. Like, because I keep hearing people say like, oh, they didn't, guys aren't throwing as much. I'm like, yeah, but the guys in the 70s and 80s didn't pitch for shit. The guys in the 60s, if you compare them to like the early 1900s, like, nice. These other guys had 500 complete games. Like, it's just trends that way.
Okay, so we have an alibi for Rick. He's at the 49ers game, but we don't know where Mangini is. So is that Don?
Rick must be celebrating
that he has the Mangini has the Jackie Robinson statue at his house? I think that's what Don is saying. What's up, Carlos?
What's up? Salute.
You made the spread.
I did. Plus 7.5, Scott. Never a doubt. Never a doubt. Garbage time touchdown for the win. Oh. Not the one I was expecting, but it works. I accept these terms.
So we're just kind of talking about the Hall of Fame, who got in, how it wasn't really exciting this year. Kind of a bland class.
Hey, pretty much, yeah.
Not superstars.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's the whole group this year. A few of those players were stars in their time. So the thing, though, is like with the Hall of Fame, it's all. I'll put it this way. My take on the Hall of Fame has always been the same. I don't care. I was like, put whoever you want in, leave anybody out who you want in. I don't give a shit. I don't take you guys seriously. I look at the first year's Hall of Fame class and how they came up with it, and the Veterans Committee Gil Hodges wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if it wasn't for the Veterans Committee. No one gives a shit. Gil Hodges wasn't a bad player. He was a good player. He was probably a really good player in his day, but like there was politicking going back decades. This didn't start with Harold Baines. Everybody picks on Harold Baines, but it wasn't his fault. Hall of Fame was already mediocre before Harold Baines.
We're talking about baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's right. But look,
when's the NFL? The NFL one's got to get announced pretty soon, right? That's probably this next week or two.
For who's on the ballot?
Everybody in creation.
Because
you're on the ballot, and I'm going to lobby for you.
It's like 30 finalists, and I forget if 6 get in or 8 get in, something like that.
5 get in.
It might be.
3 or 4 from non-players and all.
Yeah, it might
But
be.
20,
It's probably something like that.
yeah, everybody gets in. But yes, on the Football Hall of Fame, I did ask them while I was on Carlos's channel. I did vote for the Football Card Hall of Fame yesterday. Right. Some interesting cards. Like
it's interesting because they didn't make football cards before 2020.
Now, let's don't stir the pot.
In all honesty, it is. I mean, I don't know how popular that is, but
Dom the here that talks about Hall of Fames. They announced it at the NFL Awards next weekend. Well, then Paul says it's the weekend after the Super Bowl.
I thought it was before the Super Bowl. It is amazing how, for as popular as the NFL is and as popular football is, and going on for the last few decades, how little it seems, and I know there are obviously some people who care, but it seems like people could not care less about football history, vintage football cards. Like guys from the 90s seem forgotten. Guys from early 2000s seem forgotten. It's kind of interesting.
Well, players are interchangeable. It's kind of a conversation I had with Paul before, where we have a little bit of fun with it. But look, the way I would put it is that the baseball history is one thing, because you can look at the continuity of baseball history all through the eras and the decades and everything. Even though the eras change, different things happen around the different eras, the concept of the game is more or less the same. But in football, the leather helmet era bears absolutely no resemblance to by the time you get to the 40s, 50s, and 60s and the forward passing era. And that bears no resemblance, even the early Super Bowl era. And the Super Bowl era is its own thing. And then you go to the 80s and beyond, Dan Marino shows up, throws a bunch of touchdowns, and gets a bunch of yards. That's a completely different era. And then we shift it again, and all of Dan Marino's records get broken, even though he shattered a bunch of records. And they've all been broken multiple times since then. The football game has changed so many times. It's like you could have Hall of Fames for different eras, and they completely don't touch each. The earliest part of football is a different sport. It's not even the same sport.
Right. I mean, when we're going to see 1,000-yard rusher again, we just don't know when the game's going to switch back to running the ball more. Because right now it's a throwing game. You're looking for 1,500-yard receivers instead of 1,000-yard.
Well, that's what drives me nuts with everyone's the goddamn GOAT of everything. It's like, well, the game is different. Like, it's going to be a new GOAT every year for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when you think of that, how do you build a Hall of Fame then?
And if you look at statistics, like the top 50 greatest quarterbacks of all time have all played in the last 15 years.
So, Stuke, I would ask you, this era you're talking about, I would think those people should have already been in the Hall of Fame by now. I mean, if they were missed, it's kind of like the Veterans Committee turning around and putting somebody in from the 50s or 60s that played baseball for me. I'm like, if they didn't get voted in, they're not in by now. There's going to be people that are missed, like that should be probably in, like Dick Allen and some other people. But baseball is a small hall where football has a large hall. I think they probably should be in by now, wouldn't you think?
But Scott, the problem is what I just said a moment ago. The football has taken on so many iterations. Okay, let's put it this way. If we tried to put this into baseball parlance, it would be like us saying that Cap Anson played on a little league field with 3 bases. And we're trying to measure it to today's game. We've got 4 bases.
Are you trying to we can switch saying Cap Anson?
Possibly. Maybe I did. But the point is, though, imagine, though, if the game was so fundamentally – I said baseball, the thing that works for his favor is the consistency that they're playing a similar-ish enough game that we can at least – we don't need to compare them to each other, but we can at least say they played the same sport. In football, it's so weird because it feels like completely distinct sports. They're not the same. So if suddenly you went out there and said, like, oh, yeah, they only had 3 bases, and, they were 60 feet apart, but they played baseball. Oh, and it's 3 strikes, and 8 balls. Well, it's not the same sport. We're not playing the same rules. We're not,
Right.
and baseball already has that. To be fair, even though it has that longer history, but football has that where it's like, dude, it's a completely different game. The forward pass wasn't even allowed at first, and then it was, and then you had to have multiple versions of that, and then again, post Super Bowl and pre Super Bowl are two completely different eras with the way that it was presented, with the way it was done, and the ideas they had and how they performed it. 60s, 70s, and 80s football is nothing resembling today's game. Even Joe Montana may as well be 80 years ago with the difference it feels like.
Right.
Even though it hasn't been that long.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And let alone the leather helmets, guys, they might as well be 1,000 years ago. That's how long ago it feels. Like it feels like a completely different. So how do you measure those guys? How do you even objectively quantify them? Because they're playing a different sport.
That's why I said, like, Jerry Jones being the general manager for Dallas is crazy, because when he played offensive guard at Arkansas. So you're not going to tell me a man that weighed 165 pounds played offensive line at a major college, the game hasn't changed? I mean, the linemen now eat that much for lunch. So, I mean, that to me, and I understand what Stuke's trying to say, and I understand it. But to me, those guys, if they're not in by now, maybe, and I hope they're not lost to history.
I mean, there's probably some positions that have gotten overlooked at different times because of I don't know, the way they do it's asinine in my opinion, because it should be based on merit. Like, hey, if some years 8 guys get in, so be it. And if there's only 3 deserving guys, then they get in. Like, I don't understand. I know at one point there were a ton of receivers getting left out because you could only do the 5, so they kept getting pushed off. It's just kind of.
Well, I could say this, to be fair. The football now, when the guys were wearing leather helmets, even up to the Super Bowl era, football was like not a big deal in this country. Baseball was everything. Football was just a minor thing, along with basketball. The whole reason the Super Bowl came about was to compete with the World Series. That's it. The championship game got made into they wanted a spectacular name, so they came up with, okay, you have the World Series, we have the Super Bowl.
Well, they had 2 distinct leagues that had merged. They actually had 2 leagues.
Right, but they also had the AFC NFC championship game. They could have still called it the championship game. They didn't have to call it the Super Bowl. So, and that's when football still took a while before, but when it got to be national television, that's when it got taken off and what it is today. So some people might have forgotten that era, because let's also talk about baseball. We have great documentaries and everything where we don't have all of that in football. We have the NFL videos, but when did they start? Late 60s, 70s? So I don't know how much videos out there, how much stuff's out there on that, because it's the same way in basketball. We don't talk about the narrow lane era, and we don't talk, when people shot underhanded and all that stuff. So
basketball, I would say, though, is worse because basketball didn't really get going. You have cards reflect it. You had all those gaps in there where it didn't even matter enough to make cards. They had the cards in 48, then they had the cards in 57. They skipped almost a decade. You can't even imagine that in baseball. Skipping almost a decade and saying, like, yeah, 48, yeah, 57, yeah, let's go to the 60s. And barely having anything going on there. It's weird.
My great-grandfather was a 165-pound heavyweight boxer. One of my patients played basketball for the University of Tennessee back in the 50s. He was 6'5" center and the second tallest player on the team. A lot has changed with athletes in general over the years.
Yeah.
Fantasy football
6'5" is probably closer to average today.
Yeah. Point guard. fantasy football is a big reason why football is a popular today. That's very true. That and gambling.
Well, and just growing smaller attention spans and stuff. People, get that one game a week.
Well, it also means something. It also means something, Mike, that because there's less games, the individual game gains more prevalence. When you're playing baseball, you're playing 162 games. You're playing a 3-game series. You lose game 1, it's not the end of the world. You can win game 2 and game 3, and you won the series. And then you go on to the next town. You go on to the next town, or you continue your homestand or whatever. You're playing 3 games against a bunch of different teams, and it just keeps rolling through 162 game regular season. You could win. You could lose 10. You could lose 10 games in a row, and then win 10 games in a row in the same season, and no one would bat an eye. In football, you can't do that. You can't lose 10 games. You lose 10 games in a row, the season's lost. You lose 5 games in a row and then maybe reel off 3 or 4 wins and your season isn't still saved. But like even smaller, you shrink the amount of importance of a quick win streak or a quick losing streak. It matters so much more in such a small sample size of games. Literally about 1/10. One NFL game is worth about 10 MLB games. Mathematically.
Well, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty close to that.
But in MLB, you could skip. So imagine you're watching games in baseball. What if you skip the month of April? Didn't pay attention to a single game. You missed nothing. Doesn't mean anything. It matters, yes. The games count. The wins count. The losses count. But if you suddenly start watching in May, it's not like you missed the whole season. You got another 140 games going on. You'll be fine. You still caught enough of the games. You can't do that in football. You can't just suddenly skip 4 or 5 games. You won't get the context of what happened in that season. It actually matters a lot more.
Well, I'm going to bring this back. One last thing with the cards. I did notice on Tops.com this past week, they've been having on Tops Now, which MLB stuff's been on there forever. But they do now have Tops Now football and Tops Now basketball. And then last week, they did have a Tops Now basketball card up for Embiid scoring 70. Didn't have he plays for Philadelphia, right? Am I getting that right?
Embiid, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So they had that color. It had the Philly thing logo off, but it was a card of him. His name was on it and what he did. So I thought that was telling that Tops and Fanatics are getting ready to go full bore once that starts. So I've been looking every week for football just to see whenever one pops up for that. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Kind of something to look forward to with Tops and Fanatics. Looks like they're getting ready to, they already found a way for hockey by doing a Tops Now stickers for hockey. They've been doing that for a couple of years now. Outsider on NBA Hobby, but it will sell. That product sells. Yeah, it definitely does. NBA sells well. Yep, probably could, Ray. But anybody got anything else card related, sports related, chit chat? Anything, Carlos? Late to the party because you're.
Well, I don't know what you guys were talking about. So, what did you actually get to?
Yeah, how was the watch party?
The watch party was actually a lot of fun.
It was.
That game ended up being a lot more seesaw than we thought it was going to be. The first half looked like it was going one way. And look, the easy thing, it's fun because the chat started talking about, the Lions being the Lions. I got to be honest with you. They got unlucky. And I think the coaching staff's inexperience played into it. I said it multiple times during the stream. I said, this is where, look, you're a motivational guy. I'm happy for you. That's great. That's awesome. But all you needed to tell your team was to calm down.
He's hurt. Amari.
Yeah. The Cardinals still sell though. Right now they're still okay. They're still doing all right. But all I'll say is this. My whole thought while I was watching that game as I go, if your coaching staff's any good, now's your time to tell the team, hey, you know what? A couple of bad things didn't go our way. We're still in control of the game, but you still got to keep playing. You still got to make tackles. You still have to do what everything we have been doing this entire game up until this point. You don't stop because of one bad bounce.
Yeah,
that doesn't stop the game.
I was about to say that ball bouncing off the guy's helmet for a catch seems like it took the wind out of their sails.
And that's bad. And that, unfortunately, that's a coaching issue too, because the coach's job is to be like, hey, that sucks. Move on.
They went for it a couple times on a 4th down, which you don't make it. That's pretty, bad change of momentum.
It's the coaches did their part too by suddenly. I think the coaches panicked. I think the coaches' inexperience also played into it. It was a situation where some things suddenly didn't go your way, and San Francisco was just grasping at straws. They were literally just reaching to try to get a lifeline. They were struggling. Things weren't working.
That was a Hail Mary throw. I mean, he just threw it.
And one thing goes their way, and all of a sudden, Lions start getting tight. They start panicking and making stupid little mistakes. And San Francisco's and the San Francisco staff, to their credit, has at least a little bit of experience, and they're going like, "Oh shit, they're getting tight." You know what? Let's start forcing the action a little bit. Let's start making them have to make some plays. And all of a sudden, the Lions stop making plays. They stopped doing all the things that were working beautifully up until that point. And all of a sudden, Brock Purdy's mistakes, his silly throws that he's making, all of a sudden they're starting to roll. McCaffrey's getting going. The game completely shifts. And even still, they came back and they got up by 3. That's not insurmountable. 3 points, you're fine. Nope, you let him get up by 10. So you finally got the touchdown, covered by 7.5 points. Yes. But then you have to do an onside kick, and it's virtually game over at this point.
Right.
Yeah, the onside kick has always been a tough play, but then with the rule changes, it's
exactly.
What's it 5% play?
Yeah. The important thing though, Mike, is that touchdown got the 7.5 to hit. That's the important part, Mike.
I want them to change the rule back. I want them to change the rule to the XFL coin flip rule, the original one.
You mean run at the ball and get injured?
If you're going to onside kick it, you got to have 2 guys just roll the ball out and see which one gets it.
I don't know if, and the worst part, Scott, is you're talking about the XFL 1.0. That's the worst part. 1.0. The original, the OG. Scott, I'm one of the few people on the face of this planet that can say legitimately they watched almost the entirety of the first XFL season. I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw that idiocy play out in real time. The $1 million game at the end of the season.
Regardless, that game was at least enjoyable, and there was some storylines and everything. The first game to me was just a slop fest. The Chiefs obviously played very well early, and then they just kind of maintained. The Ravens were just pathetic. That was horrific coaching, poor plays on offense, just so undisciplined. Lamar Jackson is going to take a hit.
Did it look like to you in the third quarter, especially by midway to late, the Chiefs just kind of started playing very conservative?
Yeah, they were just buying their time at that point. But the Ravens, that's the disgraceful loss. With how good they were this year, and I get it. To me, if you lose a game to Mahomes and Reed and all that, if you just you're playing a tight game and they drive down and score, they outscore you or something, so be it. But that really felt like the Ravens giving it away. The amount of unnecessary penalties, I think there was at least one roughing the passer. There was unsportsmanlike conduct with the idiot on the catch, when you're already down 10 points. There was another roughing play. There were at least 3 or 4 15-yard penalties. The interception Jackson threw was just ridiculous. The dope fumbling it, why he's diving, holding the ball out, into 3 Chiefs players. Man. Yeah, but there's the time and play. That was just, it was so sloppy. It was frustrating. It wasn't even fun to watch. It was actually annoying. And it's not, I don't really like either of those teams, so it's not like I'm hardcore rooting for him. It was just, sloppy football.
And it just, that's the MVP. He's going to win the MVP, and that's how he played today. So, a lot to think about now. And U.S. sports cards. As a Packers fan, I feel like we will be NFC North champions in 2024 season now. Heartbreakers like this for the Lions might be hard to come back from. Well, Carlos said it perfectly on his that watching these games, you really like my team could be here just as easily. My team could be doing this because this league now is so equal, and all it takes is a bad half. I mean, look, Lions came out and laid an egg in the second half. They look like world beaters until that ball bounced off that guy's helmet, and it just shifted whatever reason. I'm with Carlos. I think that coach needs to probably take a hard look in the mirror tonight and think about what he probably should have done differently.
So Scott, I'll add this real quick, and it's not related to sports, but it's just in general. Anytime, so when people are talking about leadership and leaders and all that stuff, there's different kinds. A lot of them can work. There's a lot of different kinds that work, but one of the things that makes certain things happen, and even not in sports, but just in general business or whatever you want, there are some people who are built well when something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. There are some leaders who are phenomenal when everything is going right and the game plan is perfect, and they build out this intricate, beautiful game plan. And when everything is hitting exactly the way they want, oh my God, they are unstoppable. They're perfect. But then as soon as one thing goes wrong in their intricate, beautiful plan, it all disintegrates and falls apart. So the question is, can you adapt? Can you take a second step back? Does the game slow down for you, or does it suddenly speed up and you lose control? And there's a lot of guys who lose control when all of a sudden one little thing goes wrong. And even in business, I've watched managers, leaders, whatever you want. As soon as one thing goes wrong, all of a sudden they discombobulate. They completely lose their cool. They lose their composure. They lose their ability to make a rational decision. And then there's other people who sit there and like, okay, that sucked. That happened. That isn't what we wanted. But okay. And then everybody looks at them and goes, oh, but you're still calm. Yeah, because that sucks, but it's going to happen. So here's what we're going to do. Scrap everything we just did. It didn't work anymore. Fine. We're going to do this now.
Yeah.
And when people see that, a lot of times it calms them down. They're like, oh, okay. We still have a plan. We still have a way we can make this work, even though it isn't exactly what we mapped out. Mm-hmm. Scrap it. We're going to redo it. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And if the players, so bring it back to the game, if the players feel that, they feel like the coach and the people in charge are like, yeah, that sucks. You know what? Fuck it. We're going to fix it. And then you readjust, you redo your thing. And then the players all of a sudden buy into it. You're fine. You're fine. That's why I joke about it. I'm not the biggest New England fan. I'm not the biggest Brady and Belichick fan. But here's the thing about Brady and Belichick. Sometimes things didn't go according to plan. And they would just sit there and stare out and go like, fuck it. All right, whatever. And then they would just keep going. It's almost like they didn't care when a couple of things didn't go their way. Other things would go their way, but the rest of the time they didn't care and be like, look, you got to beat us to beat us. If you beat us, you beat us. But if you don't, we'll hang around until you suddenly make a mistake late. And if we're close, then we'll snatch it from you. That's a mentality. And if you have that, you can win games like that. This NFC Championship was a game where both teams could have won that game. Both teams had the opportunity to win that game. And San Francisco managed to stop making mistakes at the right time, where Detroit suddenly started making them and couldn't stop themselves. That's what cost them the game. That's it.
Yep. I'm with you on that. I mean, yeah, because it's anybody can be a leader until something goes to shit. Yeah. And once that happens, the real leaders step up and start running things.
You need to be the guy who's still comfortable when everything suddenly goes to shit and everybody's freaking out, and you're the one who's not freaking out, and everybody's going like, why aren't you freaking out? It's because the only way we're going to fix this is to move forward and just do what we need to do now. I know we were winning by this much and now we're not. Okay. Game isn't over. Detroit was tied at one point. Even though they lost the lead, they were tied.
Right.
Then they were down by 3. When they were down by 3, the game still wasn't over. You still had lots of time and you were down by 3 points. That's okay. But they kept letting things not move. They stopped. And then San Francisco got it by 10. And all of a sudden, Detroit woke up and suddenly figured out a way to score. In the second half, they couldn't score until they were down by 10. That's not good. That's your problem. The problem is you stopped scoring. You couldn't figure out a way to get points on the board, and you made mistakes, and you lost opportunities, and that's why you lost.
Do you think the Super Bowl coming up will be the most viewed Super Bowl of all time? I know we don't. There's more choices now. There's online. There's 8,000 channels. All this bullshit to distract people. But you have the Taylor Swift factor. Are there going to be people watching just to see her pop on the screen 10 times?
I think there's going to be a boost to viewers for Taylor Swift. Yes, but I also think so. And Mike, disagree with me, please, by all means. But I think a lot of football guys are almost going to be like rolling their eyes at the Super Bowl and I'm going to share a quick story real quick. Truthfully, the last New England Super Bowl, when they played against the Rams, when New England got to the Super Bowl against the Rams, I looked at both of those teams in the lead up to it. And I go, if it's the Super Bowl versus the Rams, fuck this. And that's the only Super Bowl since the early 90s that I skipped. I literally did not watch one snap of that Super Bowl. I refused. I'm like, no, I don't care. I assume the Patriots are going to win, but I don't care to watch it. The Patriots did win. It wasn't a good game. After the fact, I went weeks and months after the fact, I went and watched it, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. This is embarrassing. No wonder. It's shit. Both these teams suck. Neither one of them deserved the Super Bowl. Jared Goff was on one of those teams, just to be clear. But here's the funny thing about that, though. I think the Taylor Swift fans will watch, but I'm wondering if some of the football fans are a little turned off because, look, San Francisco beat Detroit, but they didn't beat them. Detroit was winning in the first half because they frankly played better. Green Bay played better than San Francisco for most of it. San Francisco is I think, I could be mistaken, Kansas City is a slight favorite. Do you honestly think Kansas City looks like a good team? Do you?
They've not had a good year. Their defense is pretty good. They did not have a great season, but Wesker Drift says he watches the games, and that's why he's been calling them to have an easy path to the Super Bowl. Turns out he's right.
Easy.
They made it to the Super Bowl. Well, he said they were a lock. It's an easy road to the AFC Championship, and they were going to win. And whenever you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you have a top quarterback, you always have a shot in any game. Their defense is good enough.
I agree with that.
They're kind of like New England was, where they had the core in place, where they have the coach, they have the quarterback. Certain years their offense is going to be a little better. Other years, like this year, their defense is better than their offense. The offense has been really good the last couple of weeks. Well, they've been good enough the last couple of weeks.
I thought
they haven't really played complete games.
Interesting thing that they said today that they haven't gave up more than 27 points in any game this year.
Yeah, their defense has been really good. Meanwhile, the 49ers defense, I think you thought of them years ago as a good defensive team, but they're not. They're not terrible, but they're not in any kind of elite defense whatsoever. So I don't know. I mean, this is a rematch of a Super Bowl 4 or 5 years ago, in which the Niners were playing really well. They were leading by 10, and then boom, snap of the finger, lost it in, I guess, the fourth quarter.
And that was with Jimmy G at the helm.
That was a Jimmy Garoppolo Super Bowl, and they missed that one long pass.
Mm-hmm. But I guess the question would be here. So it's kind of to follow up your question with a question. I think it'll be pretty well viewed. I'm not sitting here arguing for anything to the opposite. I think it'll be very well viewed. And I think there will be a demographic that normally isn't interested and engaged that will be engaged because the Taylor Swift involvement. I think that'll be a big thing. I guess, though, I'm not necessarily looking forward to what could be a potentially super exciting game. I worry about both these teams. There are times both of them really? Okay, I guess. And Brock Purdy was bailed out of a lot of things in this past game because Detroit at certain points couldn't exploit certain things. He managed to evade some sacks that probably could have happened. He made some throws, and he threw a fadeaway pass. And I'm like, why are you throwing a fadeaway pass? Who are you? Why? This is not an identity that you should have. San Francisco needs you to be solid and make reasonable throws. But Detroit was in the middle of collapsing on themselves. So lucky you. You're going to have to be the beneficiary of that. I just don't trust you. And that goes back a couple of rounds, but that doesn't mean they can't win right now. But the Chiefs are favored by 1.5 points. 1.5 points.
Yep. Pretty much a pick-em game.
Very close. Very close.
Well, let's end it on that. We have pretty much talked. I have talked about everything from intimidation to Hall of Fame to football. We've talked about it all tonight.
Okay, so real quick before we go, since I didn't get a chance to hear it, what are you intimidated about, Scott? Mike, is it about like clowns on cards? Like, are there clowns? Like, what is he intimidated by? I missed that.
For me,
I actually missed the majority of that portion of it.
What?
As
We
well,
didn't even hear about the intimidation? Scott, as far as I'm concerned, unless I checked the replay, you could be lying to me. You could have completely skipped the intimidation thing because you were intimidated to talk about intimidation.
I was intimidated. I was scared. I was intimidated by talking.
You were scared. You were scared.
I actually, when I started the show, I already had like 3 people with intimidation things to talk about before I even started the show. So it was a good one. That was probably my first 30, 35 minutes of it. And what I wanted to ask, I forgot because I'm glad Mike came on. I was hoping. So, Mike, how do you like this year's Stadium Club? You've opened a lot of it. What do you think about it?
I mean, the design is the design at this point. It's a
Just
variation of the same thing, you know. But I a lot of the images. I mean, you know, a lot of the images are awesome. I like the inserts are kind of whatever, and the parallels are always whatever, and the autograph selection. What I get is always trash, but
so I didn't notice. It looked like on a lot of the legends, it was old pictures, like the same pictures they kind of reused or rehashed.
There were definitely some photoshopping in colorization of some pictures. I know that, no doubt.
All right. Well, we'll leave it on that.
But no, I like it overall. I can't complain too much. I mean, it's a little pricey, but that's the same thing with every product now.
Yeah. Well, it's like
Stadium Club probably shouldn't cost you $1.07 per card, but it does.
Right.
By retail.
That question tonight, Amari was talking about which one to buy, and I told him you said actually the blasters for your money.
Yeah, if you just want base cards, if that's your primary focus, you just want to get a lot of cards. Blasters cost you about 50 cents a card, somewhere around that, 55. But the compact and the hobby are going to cost you, for me, like by buying full cases, cost $1.07 per card.
Well, I looked
for a chance to get an autograph, and like the autographs, I had 16 autographs, and not one of there were maybe a couple you could get $20 out of, but most of them are $5 autographs.
So those compact on a secondary market actually were $10 more because you said it was half a hobby box, which it is. The hobby boxes were going for like 130 and the compact was going for 70.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm sure prices fluctuate a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, holy cow, that's $10 more, might as well get the hobby. All right. Well, that's it. We rambled on. I have rambled on.
We got 2 weeks of football left, and then it's, everything's pushing towards baseball. So
well, the 9th,
we'll see what happens.
Dodgers and Padres, pitchers and catchers, February 9th. All right. See ya.